Hi, it's Tom Double Carl, and welcome to Politics in Perspective. So glad you could join us again. I think we have another great show. One of my all-time favorites, Steve Forbes, is going to join us to talk about the Fed and what Republicans need to do in 2026 on healthcare and a whole bunch of things. We're going to start out with my opening statement about the Democrats' immigration plan in a nutshell and why California's billionaire tax is going to fail. And then I'm excited to have my producer who will join us again about what's going on in Iran and why it matters. She's as connected as anybody I know on that subject. But let's get to it. Let's go to my opening statement and the Democrats' immigration plan. And there it is. It's just a 4-point plan. It's incredibly simple. They want to flood America with illegal immigrants. They did that. Mission accomplished, as you might say. What did they do? Open borders. We don't really know how many people came across that border, do we? The Democrats talk about, oh, they want people to come out of the shadows. That's because they know they flooded the whole country and a lot of people are in the shadows. Quite honestly, we don't know how many. So step one, flood America. Then, as part of that, they overwhelm the judicial system. We have a process here, due process, if you will, where if someone's here illegally, they have a certain ability to challenge whether they have to leave or not. But there's so many that our judicial system is what? It's completely overwhelmed. People get tickets now and are told to come back in 2 years. Most don't. But that's part of the plan. They knew they could overwhelm the system. Finally, what you're seeing today in a very dangerous process. They're obstructing justice, but their goal is to obstruct removal. Flood the system, don't create a dynamic where there's no way to get them out. And some of these people have to get out. They're in Minnesota, where this woman got herself in harm's way and did all these things. The guy they were after is wanted for murder in his home country and other acts here. Why would you want to protect that human being? If you, a mother of 3, by the way, why would you want a dangerous murderer in your neighborhood? We could talk about that all day long. But at the end of the day, what they are doing and what they want to do is obstruct removal. Why on earth would you want to obstruct removal? Well, the answer, of course, is number 4. There is a benefit to these blue states, California, Minnesota, New York, other places, that if we permit a system where electoral college votes are not decided by who's a citizen here, but just by who's here. So take how many millions came in under Biden? Is it 6, 8, 9, 10, 11? We don't know the answer to that either, do we? But if those blue states have those people, then they get counted. So why would they obstruct? Why would they want ICE to be shut down, stop removal? Why would they want to stop removal? Because they get a huge political benefit from stopping removal, which is more electoral college votes and their way of winning the presidency. That's their plan. It's very simple. And if Republicans don't do a better job of explaining what's going on here, the Democrats will succeed, those people will stay, and America is worse off. We need to wake up America as to what their motive is for committing these crimes. All right, before I get to the next part of my opening statement, I want to thank, of course, worldviewtube.com for carrying us, Ex America News, which carries a lot of great shows. And you can get all of these on Political Vanguard, the whole list of them. And join me at Substack, because that's where at least once a week I put out commentary that I don't seek just to rant. I want people to get a better understanding so that we can approach these problems that big government is causing us every single day. So there you are. Join me at Substack, Facebook. I tend to put a lot of stuff on Facebook, big following there. So help me out, buy my books, and let's get a greater reach to these things. Now let's turn to wacky California, the billionaires tax. So why would they want to do something like this? So under Gavin Newsom, that guy running for president, who overlooked billions in fraud in his state, and that may be his undoing. It was Tim Walsh's undoing. It could well be the end of Gavin Newsom's career, and that would be a good thing because he doesn't belong anywhere near anything responsible. Think about this. When he became governor of California, there was a $200 billion budget, already way too much. And now it's 325. His next one is closer to 350. And if he stayed there for the full 8 years, it would go over 400 billion. And what has that got California? What has big government done? Number one in unaffordability, number one in lack of opportunity, in the high 40s in crime, worst homelessness in America, number one in poverty, number one in unemployment. If government spending is so great, why hasn't it solved all the problems of the world? Well, the answer is, as Reagan said, government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem. And Gavin Newsom is the problem. His policies are that bad. So the problem with spending as much as he is there's no amount of taxation you can do to cover it up. And so, or to pay for it, right? So they came up with this billionaire's tax. Now, a little bit of history. They used to have a millionaire's tax, back in the quaint old days. They had a millionaire's tax, but the millionaire's tax was a lie. It actually started at people at $250,000. Well, if you lived in the San Francisco Bay Area with the highest housing prices or among them in the country, and you were making $250,000 after their millionaire's tax, when you combine in all the taxes from cell phones to highest gas taxes in the country, everything in California, your take-home pay was really closer to $120,000. Your mortgage was $5,000 or $6,000 a month times 12. That's like $60,000, $70,000 just in mortgage. So then you have $50,000 left to pay for college or food prices, which were high. You weren't rich, but you were subject to the millionaire's tax. So this is why Californians are leaving California for other places that have little or no tax. Why? Because the standard of living here doesn't match the cost of being here. So you take off. And that's what California's been bleeding middle class and above, and leaving who? The great Joel Kotkin, the demographer, says public employee union, the super rich, and the poor who can't afford to leave. So they come up with this billionaire's tax. Why would you stick around if you're a billionaire and they're going to take 5% of your assets, not your income, your assets? Why would you do this? Keep in mind that billionaires put a lot of their money at work. So 5% of, if you had $1 billion in assets, is $50 million. Do you think they just have $50 million sitting in the bank when the federal system doesn't insure that $50 million? No, they have a lot of assets. They don't necessarily have a lot of cash. So why would you stick around to lose 50 billion or 50 million? Sorry. And so they're leaving. It's a dumb idea. If they're not going to be here, someone else has to pay the deficit, the middle class. And that's why I wrote this Substack piece that you should read on how it is that it will fall on the middle class. Because when the billionaires leave, someone's got to pay for the deficit, and that's when it becomes a middle-class tax hike. That's my opening statement. I'm excited to have Steve Forbes next. Please support X America News, worldviewtube.com, and Political Vanguard, where you can find the whole lot of these. And we'll be right back with the legendary Steve Forbes. Welcome back, everyone, to Politics in Perspective. I hope you enjoyed the opening argument, but I really hope you enjoyed this segment. One of my favorite people in American political history is giving us the honor of talking to him today. That's the legendary Steve Forbes, 2 times presidential candidate. If only one of those had worked out, we would not be in the massive mess we are today. That's my commentary. A brilliant author, his economic historian in general. He's a living encyclopedia, and he has great ideas for how to fix America. But at the end of the day, he's also one of the best human beings on the planet. Mr. Forbes, Steve, how are you? Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, good to be on. Why don't we stop now after those words of praise? Can only go downhill from there.
There you go.
I'm going to take a tape of this to my wife and grandkids.
I am honest with this, though, because I've met you many times and I've seen you with everyday people, and you're just a very kind and nice human being to everybody. You talk to the president down to the waiter, and you treat people decently. And if I find that admirable. I try to do that as well. I don't always succeed, but let's get on with it. And I wanted to start with you with the Federal Reserve. I know there's a lot of foreign policy in the air, and you have thoughts on that, but the Federal Reserve's an issue in front of us. Milton Friedman, who taught me a lot of things, didn't have kind things to say about the Federal Reserve's success rate in what it's doing. Why don't we open with that? What are your thoughts about the Federal Reserve today and its mission that it thinks it can somehow secure full employment?
Well, the Federal Reserve, unfortunately today, operates on the assumption that prosperity causes inflation. And therefore, they have an allergy against vigorous economic growth. And that's why we have a lot of troubles with the economy. The idea that a central bank with a bunch of PhDs can manage the American economy and indeed the global economy is preposterous. And they should not be trying to stimulate or depress the economy. They don't even know how to do it. Instead, they should focus on a stable value for the dollar. We all know the importance of weights and measures in the marketplace. When we buy a gallon of gasoline, the size of the gallon doesn't change each day. The number of inches in a ruler in a foot doesn't change each day. The number of minutes in an hour doesn't change each day. We know when you have fixed weights and measures, markets, which are people dealing with each other, goes much more smoothly. So what is money? Money simply measures value, the way a scale measures weight or a clock measures time and a ruler measures length. And so the Federal Reserve has got a fundamentally flawed way of looking at the world. And the idea, one of the things that seems to be accepted by almost everyone, but shouldn't be, is their rent control, interest rate control. We all know rent control distorts real estate markets, does a lot of harm. Well, they used to call borrowing money renting the money. The interest you pay is the rent you pay on the money. And so for the Federal Reserve to be trying to manipulate the rent on money is, again, something that should be examined. And they should, I hope, the next head of the Fed just goes and gets the Fed back to having a stable currency, stable dollar. Now, uh, the Fed will say, well, we have this dual mandate of full employment and price stability. Well, the counter to that is when you have a stable dollar, that's how you get stability. That's how you can get full employment. And the Fed can't do it alone. If you have a crazy tax regime, a crazy regulatory regime, you're not going to get as much growth as you would otherwise. That's out of their hands. So the Fed can say, we're doing our part for full employment and price stability. Now you guys go do your part and don't expect us to manage the economy.
So I wrote a piece on Substack not long ago, chiding the Fed being so wrong all the time with their growth estimates. And one of the things I said is, and I maintain this, that they don't actually believe in economics. And what I mean by that is the law of demand is one of the most foundational things, that we are price sensitive. We react to changing dynamics, laws, and otherwise, right? Like the billionaires leaving California. And they do not believe that when, and this has been true, we've had 5 major tax reforms before the big beautiful bill, and people adjusted their behavior. They don't believe, their growth estimates do not believe that these incentives cause people to change their behavior, put capital at risk, make money, and grow the economy. They're stuck in this world where they think, oh, whether you raise taxes or lower them, there's no difference. So to me, they actually don't believe in economics. They're just government administrators who think they know better. Could you comment on that?
Well, their version of economics is very different from Adam Smith's version of economics.
By the way, my
So
newborn was born on Adam Smith's birthday, so I'm very bullish on him.
that's good, and we're celebrating the 250th anniversary this year, not only of the Declaration of Independence, but also the Wealth of Nations. So hopefully your newborn will have a wealthy life ahead of him. Or is it a boy or girl?
It's a boy, Thomas Luca Del Bucaro. Thank you. And he was just baptized at St. Patrick's. But anyway, back to they have a different version, you're saying, of economics.
Yes, they do. And that's why they want so-called flexibility, and they think they can manage the growth of the economy. I remember Janet Yellen would drive me crazy when she talked about the tools in their toolkit to control the economy and make things sure that they don't get too hot or too cold. You know, when the economy starts to do well, you start hearing jabber from the Fed that, this is the economy may overheat, and as if we're a machine. Markets are people, not machines. But ask yourself, if your income is going up, do you suddenly start to sweat at night? Do you feel you're overheating? And therefore, do you say, take the money away, I'm overheating? No, it's preposterous. So the whole basis on which the Fed operates is wrong. And I hope whoever heads up the Fed after Powell will ask the hard questions and lead a change to where the Fed can get back to the business of a stable currency. They do other things, as you know, regulate banks. They're sort of the banker for the US government. If you want to do things that are a little unusual, just look at their weekly balance sheet. It comes out on Thursday. And one of the items you can find that's usually on the second page is the balance that the Treasury has at their checking account at the Fed. You can see how much money the government has in its checking account, and can be as low as 50 billion and as high as over $1 trillion at one point. So the Fed's power grabs have to be curbed, and only the Federal Reserve, which shows their incompetence, Tom, they can create money on their own or grab money on their own, and they bought so many low return bonds, so many low interest rate bonds, that they're now probably the first central bank in history of a major country that has an operating loss. What they earn on their portfolio and what they pay banks on interest is in the red. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. And once upon a time, the Treasury each year used to get money from the Fed for the interest it earned on its portfolio, and now they're in the red. So it takes something when you can print your own money and still have an operating loss, which is why we do need profound changes at the Fed. Get back to what you were supposed to do, and don't try to play games on climate change, which they did, and other fashionable things. And it's an institution that really needs to be smacked down. Now, when President Trump does it, everyone says, oh, he's going after the independence of the Fed. Well, that's the wrong issue. The real issue is what is the operating basis of the Fed? And we know that that is profoundly damaging. And that's the real issue, not the so-called independence of the Fed. And by the way, almost every president has had fights with the head of the Fed, not with the flamboyance of Donald Trump. The only thing that came close to it was back in the 1960s when Lyndon Johnson was president. Uh, we had the Vietnam War, which was expensive. We had Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, which was spending a lot of money. And the Federal Reserve hinted that they're going to have to raise interest rates. So Johnson calls the head of the Fed to his ranch in Texas, a guy named William McChesney Martin, and just takes the guy by grabs his shoulders and throws him, literally by the lapels, lifts the guy up and throws him against the chimney because he was going to raise interest rates. Well, Martin managed to escape from the ranch and raised interest rates. But presidents often fight against the Fed. But the key thing is, if the Fed has, and everyone, if everybody understands the Fed's goal is to keep the stable dollar, keep the value of the dollar stable, then I think it can preserve its independence because it has a clear definition of what to do and how to do it.
Yeah. If only people knew there were cameras around when Lyndon Johnson was president, they may not think Trump was dictatorial. They'd be, Johnson had interesting tactics, as you point out. You've written extensively at Forbes Media.
By the way, Johnson had, when he was head of the Senate, they called it the treatment, where he would take a senator by the lapel, put his face in their face, and just absolutely go after them to persuade, quote unquote, to do what he wanted them to do. And everyone knew about the treatment. Well, he gave McChesney Martin the treatment. Yes.
Yeah, that was his style. Them were the old days. You wrote a piece at Forbes about what you think President should do related to the Fed. What do you think the Fed should be doing right now, and how should Trump react to it?
Well, what the Fed should be doing is one, and the Treasury Department has to do it too. Presidents get the dollar they want at the end of the day. By law, the Treasury Department's in charge of the dollar. We have this peculiar division of labor between the Fed and the Treasury Department. But anyway, we should make it clear that the purpose of the policy henceforward is a stable value for the dollar. We're going to wind down the Fed's portfolio. We're going to phase out paying interest on bank reserves, which pays them not to lend. And we're going to look at things like the gold price. We can't go back to a gold standard yet because they don't understand it. So many myths about it. But Alan Greenspan, for a while when he was head of the Fed back in the 1990s, said he looked at the price of gold in determining monetary policy. It's the best barometer, but you can't say that because that's like waving the cross in front of vampires. They just go berserk if you mention the subject. So, but look at the gold price, look at commodity prices, which are all signaling monetary inflation down the road, and take it from there. But the key thing is that the Fed should announce no longer do they believe that prosperity causes inflation. And that, I think, would be a profound relief to the markets.
Well, let's talk about inflation, because there's few people on earth that have written as much about this. Correct me if I'm wrong, remembered Greenspan saying we shouldn't be spending as much money. I don't recall Powell doing this. Uh, have we not set ourselves up with the 40, soon to be 40 trillion in national debt and $2 trillion deficits, sort of this permanent inflationary risk thing? And then the next great crisis, whatever it is, they'd go spending wildly and inflation would come back like it did under Biden? And shouldn't we do something about this in advance?
Well, what the Fed should be saying instead of going along with every fashion out there is that they will work to have a dollar that you can trust, and the rest is up to them. And one of the things that happens is, one, if you have bad economic policy, taxes and regulations and the like, you get a depressed economy, and that puts pressure on the government to come to the rescue by spending. And then you have to float bonds to finance the deficit because the economy is not throwing off revenues the way it should. And that puts pressure on the Fed to buy the bonds. And when you buy the bonds, you know how they do it. They'll call up a dealer like Goldman, say, we want $1 billion of bonds. And Goldman says, fine, here are the bonds. And then the Fed credits Goldman's account at the Fed with $1 billion. Where does the $1 billion come from? Out of thin air. It's the ultimate cash machine, the ultimate ATM. And so when you have bad times, the Fed is under enormous pressure to bail the government out by printing money, and we all know where that leads. So yes, and it's no coincidence. A couple of things. One, when we went off the gold standard in the early 70s, not quite knowing what we were doing, they thought it was just a temporary election gimmick to rev the economy. The average growth rate in the American economy has plummeted from what it was for 180 years. And incomes today would be $40,000 to $50,000 higher, household incomes, median household incomes, if we had maintained our 180-year average of growth. That's what happens when you have an unstable dollar. And that's why I think that the Fed should be very clear. They can say, we're not here to do regulatory policy or tax policy. But we all know that if you do certain things, you're going to get certain results. Just look at history. It's amazing how they don't look at what's happened in the past,
No,
as if
no.
that's irrelevant.
Yeah, well, that would constrain their fantasies like the Phillips curve and other things like that, or that government has a multiplier effect that the average marketplace somehow is inefficient. Okay, so I would love Kevin Warsh to be the next Fed chair. Who's your pick?
Um, well, I think this will all be experts soon enough, but I wouldn't be totally surprised if, given what's been happening, that Scott Bessent is made head of the Fed, who can go in there with the authority. There's no way they're going to buffalo him. And even if he's not right now in favor of things I might be in favor of, he knows how to ask the right questions. He knows how to make policy based on the evidence, not on some crazy theory. So, and then Kevin Hassett, I think, would probably go over to the Treasury Department. But there's no way to really predict because President Trump doesn't know yet either. He's been known to change his mind, and he's so who stay tuned. But Bessent, I think, would have the authority to make changes at the Fed, and would be less. And I think the Senate would be less likely to try to block his nomination because he's come across as a sensible adult who quickly picks up things and can ask the right questions and knows how to get things done, has had experience in the markets, in the private sector, real experience, not as a lawyer or an architect or whatever, but real operating experience.
Yeah,
So I think he'd be a strong candidate.
yeah. I think he's one of the best public servants we've had in decades, and he just has a temperament for the times.
Yeah.
So let's you mentioned inflation, but I do want to get to this because you're an expert. It drives me nuts that we conflate inflation with CPI, because CPI doesn't measure just government devaluing the dollar or the results of government devaluing the dollar. Other things come into it, like supply and demand, or a lot of
Lo
dead
and
chicken.
behold.
So why have we become lazy in conflating that? Because to me, it hides the detrimental things. In Rome, in Rome around Diocletian's time, they just removed silver from the Roman coins over time. And then the taxpayers wouldn't even take the worthless coin. They said, no, you got to throw in some cows because I have to pay the government in something that's real. So why have we allowed CPI to be, quote, inflation? I think it hides the bad things government does.
Well, trying to measure inflation by just the prices in the marketplace, those are the symptoms of economic trouble, not the cause. And it's like when you get a temperature, it's a symptom that something's wrong with you. And that's why you mentioned Rome. They repeatedly devalued their currency, raised taxes, and that was the critical reason why that sapped their strength over time, and they collapsed, the Western Empire. And in terms of again today, in terms of the CPI, uh, it doesn't necessarily go up if you've been mucking around with the currency. Back in the early 1930s, Franklin Roosevelt devalued the dollar, seized gold, devalued the dollar. Didn't show up in the CPI, but it helped stood us, but it stood in the way of a recovery from the Depression. We never really did recover from the Depression till after World War II, when we did a few things right, and that's why, in terms of the CPI, I think a much better thing to look at for trouble is the gold price. It's been the best barometer for a variety of reasons for 3,000 years. When you see the gold price change, that's not so much the value of gold changing as it is the currency changing in value, in perception. So if the gold price is going up in terms of dollars, it means the dollar is in trouble. Just one quick example: in the 1970s, when oil went from $3 a barrel to $40 a barrel, a lot of people concluded we were running out of oil. OPEC was out of control. And yet, when the inflation was stopped in the early 80s under Reagan, the dollar price went from 40 down to 10 and finally stabilized for a few years at 20. But the rise in the oil price was not so much oil becoming more scarce as it was the dollar becoming weaker. And that's what you have to be on the watch out for. Right now, by the way, oil is low, but other commodities are starting to move up, and that's not a good sign.
Yeah, often the value of gold is a commentary on the market's belief in what policymakers are doing.
And
Uh,
by the way, in terms of, to your point on the CPI, if you get a big improvement in technological breakthrough or something, suddenly they put that in the CPI. And so the CPI reflects what people are buying now in the marketplace. And if you have a booming economy, let's say a developing country goes from a per capita income of $100 to 10,000 over a generation, guess what that means? Services that you could have had for 25 cents, suddenly now you're going to pay several dollars for. That's a rise in the standard of living. That's not inflation. That's you have more things to buy and better things to buy. So you put something like our handhelds in the CPI. Apple's prices go up each year. I think they're now at model 85 or 17 or something. Uh, uh, you're now holding not just a telephony device, which the first one was 40 years ago. You're holding a supercomputer in your hand, doing massively more things. And how does that get reflected in the CPI? The thing is,
I
it doesn't.
so thank you. On that point, I have maintained that do not we're not able to actually quantify how much productivity the computer we understated in our evaluations, and that this productivity keeps prices otherwise down or raises the standard of living more than we actually recognize. I'm an attorney. I had one of the first laptops ever. It allowed me to do work from anywhere. I reduced my costs related to having a secretary. I think we undervalue it. What's your thoughts on
Uh, uh,
productivity?
I think it absolutely does. And one way to measure how actually we're doing, and a couple of people are working on this, several are, is instead of trying to adjust for prices and inflation and all that kind of stuff, how many hours do you have to work to get a certain product? And time pricing. There's no, and so that way, so how many hours does it take to work to get a fancy new car? And well, how many hours do you have to work to get a tomato? And when you look at that kind of thing, when you look at, for example, a light bulb, which is in terms of duration and illumination, is worth about 1,000 candles 250 years ago, would have taken you to get the similar amount of light for that many hours a day, about 6 months of work 200 years ago. Now it's about 30 seconds. And so what the time the time cost, I think, is as they refine that, is going to be, since you can't manipulate time, unlike mileage for airlines or currencies for government. I think we're going to get a better feel or better measure of how the standard of living is, which, to your point, I think is increased much more than what the numbers hold. For example, GDP. You look at the 1920s, a great decade for GDP. But what it didn't measure was the vast increase in the standard of living, labor saving devices. GDP, if you went from one outhouse to two outhouses, would say, yeah, you had double. But it doesn't measure going from an outhouse to indoor plumbing and vast improvements like that. And by the way, one of the big things that came out of the 20s was electric irons, ironing your shirt or pants or dress or whatever. Before, that was a great source of injury because you had to use a fire to heat the iron, cause all sorts of problems. But with an electric iron, suddenly this source of constant injury and discombobulation went out the window. Well, how do you
Yeah.
measure that?
Yeah, Milton Friedman used to talk about the disease in the cities with horses versus the cars. Everybody complained, "Oh, car pollution," but we seem to forget that horses manure
Yes.
got us pretty sick. You recently wrote last month about healthcare, what Republicans can and should do, and you think can help them win. I got asked just the other day in a couple speeches, why aren't the Republicans doing anything on healthcare? Well, I trust you more than them. So, what do you think the Republicans should do on healthcare?
I think they're stumbling into it now, finally, but it should be a combination of removing barriers to health savings accounts so you can spend it on things like telemedicine. You can sort of do it with an HSA, but you have to go through there are restrictions. Remove that kind of restrictions. Remove the restrictions on how much money you put in an HSA. And so liberate that and turn it into something like what we have with 401ks or IRAs, where you own it. You determine what policy you want, not your employer. You can have a choice, but you make your own choice, and it's totally portable. And also, you should be able to buy an HSA whether you have a health insurance policy or not. So remove all those crazy restrictions. Go after the PBMs, pharmaceutical benefit managers, who may have played a useful role once, but now just add to the cost. Probably 50% of the cost of a drug now is an unnecessary middleman. And a few basic things like that: patient power, transparency on prices, and curb the PBMs. And I think that people would find that rather attractive.
Yeah, I do. I do as well. By the way, California, remarkably, one of the few places I tell people California is the most regulated dirt in the world. It allows uh, telemedical, but New Jersey, right across from where you are right now, um, doesn't, and it blows my mind the additional cost that puts on everybody. But we're running out of time. Your prescription of what you think Republicans should do this year with regard to the economy, and not just relying on what they did last year.
What they should do is go, I hate the name, reconciliation bill, but go for another tax cut. And this way, reduce income tax rates, reduce the corporate rate, which the president wanted to do originally, and reduce the capital gains levy. You know, every time we reduce capital gains taxes, excuse me, revenues go up instantly. Excuse me. Why did they go up instantly? Because people realize gains. The punishment of realizing your past gains go down, so you're more likely to realize them. And so it's an instant revenue raiser, gets capital moving again. So focus on those three things right now. And so people visibly see, not just with their tips or overtime, not just with a company making investment, but with your income and with the profits you make are not going to be gobbled up so much by the government. That's what they should focus on right now. Ultimately, I wish they'd get a flat tax and a stable dollar and freedom in health care. But let's go for a big cut in tax rates. Let the Democrats complain that this will increase the deficit and hurt people. No, they don't. When people get to keep more of what they earn, guess what? They find more ways to earn more. It's not this static thing, and we all have a better society.
Yeah, if you recall, when I ran against Kamala Harris, Steve Moore and I worked out a flat tax I ran on, and you were gracious enough to endorse my efforts. It is entirely my fault that we talk about Kamala Harris because she beat me. Yeah, it worked out. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, you got to just keep out there, and eventually, you know, Lincoln lost a lot of elections before he succeeded. So you just got to keep trying. So you're doing civilization's work.
I appreciate that, but few people have done it as well as you have and as graciously as you have. I could talk to you for hours on end. I commend you for people to share this, but also to get your books, because we need better education in this democracy so that people understand the sources of the problem. Government is not the solution to our problems. Government is often the problem. I think Reagan said that a couple of times. But
yep.
Steve,
and by the way, one of the things we have to do better is explain what free markets are. Just saying free market and that kind of thing is an abstraction. One of the things I'm working on, talking about Milton Friedman, is old Free to Choose group. They have an education thing called Is It? How they came up with that name, I don't know. IZZIT. But anyway, I've helped produce short bios of people who created the modern world, 3 to 4 minute bios, which make free market lessons through stories. Stories get points across better than abstractions.
Yes, so, which is why I love your analogies. You're exceptional. I try and do that. I tell people the reason why Macy's puts things on sale is because it adjusts people's behavior. They come in to save $20. And I when I had Dr. Laffer on, I said to him, we need to put the economy on sale. And that's by, see, you like that too, reducing, because people will adjust their behavior. Steve, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for all you do. I'm sorry we ran out of time. You're a true
Thank kid. You. Look forward to doing it again. Thank you, Tom.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll be right back on Politics in Perspective. Welcome back, everyone, to Politics in Perspective. I hope you enjoyed the great Steve Forbes. He's one of the nicest people on the globe, one of the best people, but one of the most knowledgeable. If we had a flat tax, if we had consistent money, you'd be a lot richer. Instead, we have big government, which interrupts your lives, the economy, and holds us back from what we could achieve. And so when you vote, remember, big government's not your friend. It comes around and loots your money and holds you back. So vote for politicians who get that, not for politicians who want to rule you. Speaking of places where they want to rule the people, I'm pleased to have back my producer and good friend over the years, and someone who understands Iran. Starting with how you pronounce Iran, not Iran, Iran, and what's going on there. Because Iran, I've always said, is one of the most dangerous places on the globe, because they're more dangerous than Russia, than China, because if they actually had a nuclear weapon, they would use it or give it to someone to use. China and Russia plod along. They have long-term visions. They don't make radical moves. Iran would. And Iran exterminates their people if they need to hold on to power. So Annie, welcome back. Thanks for sharing some time with us, other than the fact that you produced this show. What is the latest? Are there Iranians held captive in their homes? Why has the number, or have they, the number of protests diminished? Take over.
Sure. Oh, well, first of all, thank you. I have always appreciated that at least you know how to pronounce the name of my motherland. That's pretty good. But yes, okay, so latest as fast as I can give. Yes, every single Iranian who is opposing the regime could now be considered a hostage in your home or on the streets. We have confirmed reports from inside that the morality police, IRGC, and besieged soldiers are literally storming homes, doing searches, and whatever they can find. We have had reports of they found Bible, they found satellite dish, they found Starlink devices, and that's all they need. They will wrap up the entire family, take them in. Some have been disappearing again. Unfortunately, one case, one of the kids tried to run away. They shot him in the back, 17-year-old. He died on the scene. And if you're on the street, again, they will pick you up because it's full martial law in the country now. However, regardless of how much arrest, shooting, killing is happening, the number has shrunk, yes, but people are still going on the streets and trying to take cities or institutions or burn down police departments and mosques. As of right now, we have confirmation over 250 mosques have been set on fire by people.
Have been what?
Set on fire.
Wow. Can I stop you there? Because Persia is one of the great civilizations in ancient history. Is it not a misconception that Iran is a Muslim country?
It is a huge misconception. Yes, Iran, with over 2,700 years of history, originally a Zoroastrian nation, then a Zoroastrian and a Christian nation, until the invasion of Arab Muslims, where they forced Islam on the land. Many escaped. You see a lot of the Zoroastrians in India now. Christians also started escaping back then in Syria, where it was safe, and then gradually other places. Then Iranians took back the country, regulated what we have in America, freedom of religion, basically, until 79. 1979, it became the law of the land that if you are not a Muslim, you're considered second-class citizen. You have to pay extra taxes until you're broke and you can't pay it anymore. Then you either become a Muslim or you be executed. So yes, you're correct. Persia or Iran Persians and Iranians are not Muslims.
And so they live like you did, essentially in fear, and you were eventually jailed because you didn't act Muslim enough.
Correct. So we have a huge number of Christians who have underground churches, but when they come out of their homes, they wear the full hijab. They attend all the mandatory events they have to, because otherwise they will be jailed. Now, they are a little more kind towards Christians. They end up with 25-year sentencing, present time. But Baha'is and Jews are immediately, first, all of their assets are confiscated by the regime, and then they're hung next morning. They don't even get present time. They're just executed.
So what would you like to be the president to do right now, and what would you like the exiled prince to do right now?
In the perfect world, I would say Crown Prince Pahlavi is already doing all the right things, including having a 100-day emergency transitional plan, a blueprint, to help the country moments after fall of regime. He's already addressing world leaders. He did a press conference answering media questions. So he's doing his part. From American administration point of view, I would very much like for United States of America to help the people of Iran with airstrike, no boots on the ground at all, just airstrike where they would take out the headquarters that has been requested by Prince Pahlavi's team, where it will take out the armed militia pro-regime people who are killing the Iranian people, and then we just come back home and they will finish it from there.
Okay, so stop there. You to understand Iran, you have to understand a little bit about its power structure. So please, in the couple of minutes we have left, explain the power that is, because America has a judicial system, it has a Congress. That's not the deal in Iran. So quickly explain that, and why striking that guard unit is so important.
Sure. So Iran is a dictatorship, true meaning. Everyone and everything happens under approval of the supreme leader. They have a Sharia Supreme Court, which actually, as soon as they started the blackout, the Sharia Supreme Court went ahead and issued an umbrella punishment. Anyone arrested at the protest is guilty of waging war against Allah, therefore everybody's sentenced to death. That's how the judiciary system works. One judge, Sharia judge, in one Supreme Court will issue sentencing. Also, Iranians do not have the right to a speedy trial nor a lawyer. They don't have to give you a lawyer. And you don't have to stand trial. They can just look at what you did and decide the judgment. Then we have the military. It still reports to the Supreme Court. However, it's the military, normal military, supposedly. They don't function based on Sharia. And then you have IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They take orders directly from Supreme Leader. And they have different departments such as morality police, besiege, riot forces. Supreme Court tells IRGC, kill to shoot. IRGC tells all the departments, shoot to kill. And that's how you end up with confirmed 15,000 Iranian protesters shot and killed on the streets of Iran.
Okay, so we have less than go. You want them to strike that guard unit because that would result in what?
That would result on a fair battlefield. Iranians are not armed. If they take out those headquarters, neither will the forces that are killing them. They won't have the ammunition to continue killing.
Okay, so what's the possibility you think that we're going to get regime change and that the Prince's 100-day plan will come to fore?
The first part, it's 95% of regime change.
Wow.
For Western countries.
You and I have been friends for 15 years, and that's the highest number you ever gave me by far.
Yes. Yes, the evidence shows the regime is done. It's done. But the possibility of Western countries allowing Crown Prince Pahlavi to be the transitional government is less than 5%.
Oh, wow.
He's a
Okay.
very unpredictable, uncontrollable candidate for them.
Okay, we have to run. We'll be back next week on Politics in Perspective. Join me on Substack, Facebook, and other places. I'm Tom Del Bucaro. See you next week.